Ah, yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, got you loud and clear. Thank you for taking the time
Technology's working. Good to see you.
because
Thanks for having me on.
I'd like to say, I think this is something that's going to be really beneficial for everyone because, like some of my personal trainer friends who will jump in here at some point will know, one of the most common things we come across in terms of objections is the too busy one. And I figured you'd be the perfect person to speak to about that because I challenge anyone to be as busy and robust as you, and you get a lot done. So I figured this would be quite a good
Uh,
one. Um,
I'll challenge you on the busyness thing as well later on. I think
yeah,
it's about being less busy, but more having more impact.
touche. I'll take that. So, just to kind of like fill people in, met you through martial arts some years ago. At that point, it was already apparent to me that you'd had some martial arts training before, like you weren't just straight off of the into the gym and onto the mats for the first time. You'd obviously had some experience. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what attracted you to the martial arts? Because it's not a pursuit that a big amount of people go into. It's not that widespread. And it's interesting to me and to a lot of people what kind of drew you to it. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your martial arts background and what attracted you to it?
Well, I probably came to martial arts quite late. It was when I was at university. I'd always been quite active and quite sporty. I swam for my county as a teen, so I was used to training hard. But as well as sort of the physical side, I really enjoyed the kind of community and the social side as well. So when I started at university, I came to Leeds to study where we are now. I was already looking for something to keep me busy on the health and fitness side. But I remember, because I'm from a town, and I remember moving to a city, my mum being really worried about kind of gun and knife crime because you hear all these scary things on the news, and we're from quite a small place compared to Leeds. So I guess I was interested in something from a self-defense point of view as well. So, but yeah, I turned up at the Freshers' Fair, and being completely honest, the Taekwondo Society were having the most fun on their table.
Yeah,
So naturally drawn to those guys. They're a really friendly bunch. But yeah, I got into it through that really, and just really, like I say, enjoyed sort of the self-defense element as well as sort of the mental and physical discipline element of it. The opportunity to compete and it being quite creative and artistic as well.
yeah. Well, to be fair, that the point that you make about the self-discipline is something that I always say has a lot of carryover into life. Like the lessons you can learn in martial arts in terms of self-discipline and driving yourself, something that you can generally apply to kind of all areas of your life. What
Totally.
kind of came in with us? Well, obviously, we were looking at mixed martial arts, which is, I suppose, the best way to put it is modern fighting. It is somewhat like kind of disjointed from the kind of more antiquated martial arts in terms of it's a lot less formal, a lot more, I suppose people would say, violent and impactful, and it's quite a bit of a dichotomy with yourself in that side of the sport can be very impactful and violent, but you also gravitate towards some very kind of peaceful and outdoorsy and natural and calming pursuits. That's something I wanted to get you to talk about. So just give us a little breakdown. Like I say, if anyone follows Helen, you would have seen relatively recently she was out wild swimming in the frozen lakes. So talk to us a little bit about your more, I suppose, extreme pursuits in the natural world.
Okay. So yeah, the two extremes. So one thing I didn't mention, I grew up listening to rock music and going to gigs, and I was well acquainted with the mosh pit. So in terms of kind of throwing myself in there and getting a bit battered about, that didn't bother me at all. And yeah, so that was sort of, when I first got into martial arts, obviously when I was a bit younger, we kind of full of energy and, how should we say, throwing ourselves into work hard, play hard lifestyle when you're younger, which a lot of us do. Yeah, I guess I was just, with the mixed martial arts, I think I was interested in learning another discipline. One of the things that the Taekwondo Society at uni did, they kind of got people in from different styles. We did with a bit of, is it kenjutsu with the swords, nunchucks, that kind of thing, and judo as well. And I was really interested in sort of the difference between the hard and soft martial arts, redirecting force, all that kind of thing. So yeah, it was trying something different. And I quite liked the idea of kind of throwing myself back into it. It was obviously the gym that I was training at anyway. So yeah, it was sort of easy to turn up. And I must admit, when I first got there and realised I was the only female on the course, I was like, right, some poor sod's going to have to be paired up with me. So they're going to probably be holding back, not wanting to hit a girl. And I was like, right, if they're going to get a good session out of it, I'm going to have to straight away prove that they need to not worry about it. So I just, well, you know, I kind of threw myself in and really got stuck in. Yeah, so then moving on a few years to all the mindfulness and stuff that I've been doing recently, this came out of, you know, life changes that I've had. I've become a parent. I'd, a couple of years ago, pushed myself to the point of burnout, working too hard, like trying to balance parenting and working, juggling, running a business. And I learned my limits. Basically, pushed myself to the breaking point. I was like, right, that's where that point is. I know now. So the past couple of years have been more of a journey of kind of unpicking that and restructuring everything to find a bit more balance, where I wasn't just living on the extremes all the time, where I could find some balance with that. I mean, you know, I've still got there's still that drive in me that I like to kind of throw myself into things. And I guess you'll see that you mentioned about like the ice water swimming, that kind of thing. I'm still really interested in what those extremes of mental and physical ability are. But you can't live at that extreme 24/7. So it was about finding the balance and finding ways to sort of stay grounded and calm and create more space for chill out as well, which was another thing that I didn't used to be very good at. So it all kind of came about from that perspective, really.
So when it comes to, you make a good point about like people, I suppose, like in training terms, we call it like redlining, when you're basically just like overtraining constantly and underresting. You could take that mentality to every aspect of your life. Like, there'll be people listening to this that will be, say they work a 9 to 5, but then they go home and they do another 4 or 5 hours cramming in work. They sleep for like 5 hours a night before they get up and do the whole thing again without ever resting, and basically just hovering just below burnout, because they can function just below. They never really get that time to recover. So when it comes to like you going out and swimming in a frozen lake and doing all this thing that a lot of people would think of as quite extreme, but also something that a lot of people would I suppose enjoy doing if they took the time to do it. But the people at that kind of aspect are going to be telling themselves, I can't get this done. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. It's one of the most common objections we get, like in my profession, the people looking to get fit, but I'll start when I have time, you know, and this and that. From someone that has pushed themselves to the point of burnout, what would you say to those people in terms of making the time to look after yourself and take care of your own mental well-being and do these kind of things that can basically just stop you from just flying off that top end of the extreme scale?
Yeah, so I think sometimes a rock bottom place, it forces you to look at everything. And if anyone who's been in that place, whether it's a breakdown, you know, mentally, physically, burnout, they, you know, and I'm talking like couldn't get out of bed, couldn't hold a thought in my head long enough to speak a sentence, like I couldn't process a thought. Like that's the point it was at. And just not being able to sort of see past that point, see what what was in the future, and see a future. Like, you've got two choices. It's sink or swim. You make a decision. And I guess that drive and determination I had, like that decision was, I got to do something about it. Yeah, ideally you don't want to get to that point. Ideally you want to fix the problem before you get there. but you know, so many people who are into sort of, you know, extreme sports, or even people I've met through coaching, it's come about because of a life-changing experience, whether that's, you know, burnout or whatever, or it might be like a change in situation, like they've become a parent, they've had a shift in priorities, the values have changed, you know, the sense of identity's changed. Or I guess in your line of work, it's like people have hit a real physical low. You know, they feel trapped in the body. They're you know, they want to be active, they want to be maybe there for the kids, but they don't have the physical energy. So there is often that turning point. But you know, I guess when people say they haven't got time, what I tend to find they're really saying is it's not a priority, or, you know, they don't see any way to fit it into their day. But actually, there's so many, you know, firstly, on the priorities, I guess it's getting down to making people think, well, you know, what's the alternative of not fixing this? I mean, for me, like burnout breakdown, that's a big incentive for me. I don't want to be there again. Yeah. You know, if it's sort of, you know, if it's a physical health thing, I mean, you know, the long-term impacts of not looking after your health are pretty savage. Or whether, you know, it might be, if it's not within themselves, it's a driver to be there for the family, or, you know, to be around for the kids, or be able to get, you know, kick football about and not get out of breath, or whatever it is. So it's firstly finding that motivation, and, you know, what's that thing that's really important, and focusing on that. And then when it comes to the time element, I mean, I just say, you know, everyone's got time if it's a priority for them. So you just need to kind of, I mean, even when I think I'm functioning at a really high level of productivity, I can still go and see on my phone, like, time on social media. I mean, I use it for work anyway, but you can go and see, and I would bet you can probably, the 20 odd 30 minutes a day, or 3 times a week you need, I can bet that you'll have, you know, someone will have spent that time scrolling on social media. You know, you could shoehorn it in before you get you know, get up a little bit earlier. There's ways to fit it in. So it's first finding out, like, getting deep on the reasons and the motivations, and then just looking at structuring your day. I mean, one of the things I found really challenging as a single parent, when I had my daughter, I was really keen to get back my physical fitness, as well as sort of the impact of breakdown and burnout. There's the impact of, because I became a single parent when I was pregnant, so I was single from the start, is all the impact of childbirth as well. And anyone, you know, any woman who's had a baby knows it takes a while to build that back up again. So trying to find a way of exercising when you've got a baby as well, it's just like the practical aspects of, like, what do you do with the baby? Yeah. I was really lucky to find a gym, which unfortunately is closed down now. I don't know if you know Andy Berry, who ran Generation Fit, Bramley and Leeds, but he did some sessions, like, where you could take your kids. His daughter was a similar age to mine, and it was sort of that sense of community, which you build really well with your sessions. Actually, I think that's what keeps people going, is that sort of community aspect. But yeah, finding a way to exercise with your child if you've got kids, or yeah, just like there's always a way to shoehorn it in if it's important to you. So yeah, it's just looking at your whole day and how you fit it in there.
I think you make a really good point about getting into the initial motivations to start, because at the start of any journey, motivation is always something that's going to start the journey. It's not something that will continue the journey, because motivation always has peaks and troughs. So there are points where you'll need discipline and just consistent habits, or the discipline to build those habits, and then the habits kind of take over. But when it comes to the initial motivation, digging deep on that with any journey is something that is something that you should really hammer home. So, like, if someone comes to me and they say they want to lose weight, most of the time what they really mean is they want to do the things that you're doing. Like, they want to be able to, like, go out with their child and not feel tired, or they want to go swimming in a frozen lake, but they're worried that they don't have the physical capacity to do it because they don't feel fit enough, or even just confident enough to do it. But but putting aside the time to really get down to your why, and like, why is it important to you, is something that I think every journey should begin with. And when it comes to like your own personal motivations, how do you think those have changed since from when you were a young 19-year-old in uni at the taekwondo table, like throwing yourself into sessions and redlining it, to now being a single mother? You know, like, your own priorities are going to change. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your own personal motivations, how they differed over those years, and kind of going forward, what's keeping you motivated, and what you're aiming to achieve with everything?
So I think when you're young, you've got no fear. You know, you throw yourself into anything. When you have no responsibilities, like, and your only responsibility is to yourself, like, I mean, depending on your personality, I guess, you know, some people are more willing to throw themselves into things than others. But yeah, I think for me, and this reason I've not got back into M&A since becoming a parent, actually, is maybe it's thinking about my age as well. Is like, if I seriously break, you know, if I break a limb or something, how am I gonna, you know, look after the child? But yeah, I think not just sort of on the physical side, but the patterns that I had of kind of throwing myself full pelt into work as well, which you know, I just had to. I had to find a different balance, because you'll know, as a new parent yourself, like, the sleep isn't there for the taking. Like, you've got, you know, when you're younger, you can kind of go out all weekend and catch up on sleep another time, and but you can't, you know, you can't do that when you're a parent. So yeah, priorities changed. I was very career driven before. I was very ambitious. Career was really important to me. And, you know, other aspects of life, like social life, traveling, that kind of thing, really key part of who I was and my identity. And obviously when you become a parent, all of that shifts, because it's no longer just about you. It's about looking after another little person, and you can't just, like, you know, jet off on a plane somewhere, or like go work a conference for a few days. Like, there's practical, logistical stuff to organise as well. But just kind of from a values point of view, you know, you suddenly, your whole perspective on life changes, or, you know, and mine did. And it suddenly became all about, how can I be the best parent? How can I inspire this child and you know, raise them to sort of, you know, love their life, live their life. And a big element of that is creating time to spend with them, and making sure that you've got the energy to be able to make the most of that time as well. So yeah, everything changed. I guess I was in a lucky position of working for myself anyway, so I had that autonomy at work. A lot of people don't have that, and you know, unfortunately, that's why a lot of women end up leaving, you know, corporate careers or jobs with a lot of responsibility, just because unfortunately that flexibility often isn't there. Hopefully that's changing with the pandemic. That's a whole other conversation. Now we've seen how flexible working could work. But yeah, it's for me, it was, I wanted to sort of work more part-time hours, create time and space for my daughter, and I also, you know, I touched upon before some of the challenges that I had. So, well, I split up with my daughter's dad and my long-term partner halfway through the pregnancy, and then 2 months later, lost 90% of my income as my biggest client, which was an agency, went under. So the SHIT really hit the fan. And then, like, a month later, I had a baby in my arms. So it was like, whoa, everything that, all the structures that were there in place that you normally rely on had gone. And yeah, it was a really, really tough period. But what it did do, that sort of total reset on everything, was allowed me time and space to kind of think, well, what do I actually want to put back in? And I think this might resonate with some people from the past year. You know, yes, people have had very different experiences. Some people have had a lot more time. Some people have had a lot more pressures and a lot more to deal with. And now kids have gone back. Parents are maybe getting a bit of that time now. But just to rethink, you know, we get so, we can slip into a mentality that things will always be how they've always been. And those big changes are like, it's a sharp kick up the ass of like, wow, it could be totally different. So that was that period for me. It was like, okay, how can I design a life that works for me? You know, balance time for my daughter, looking after my health and well-being first and foremost, which I'd never really done. Yeah, you know, I'd done a lot of sports and stuff, but it was, you know, it was always pushing myself constantly for more and, you know, bigger challenges and fitting around work. And sleep was like, you know, sleep when you're dead kind of mentality. Yeah. Whereas now, sleep's a massive priority for me. It's like one of the first things to go into my schedule. My family time, that's really important. Exercise time. And I actually, with my coaching clients, this is one of the things that we talked about a lot is how do you construct your day or your week to make sure you're balancing up you know, time blocking for the things that are important, and then fitting everything else around that, and making sure that you're, I mean, what worked for me was focusing a lot more on energy management over time management. So looking at those things in the week that are a drain on energy or where you need an extra injection of energy, and then counterbalancing that with activities that kind of ground you or bring you more energy. So yeah. Going back to what you were saying about all the mindfulness and stuff, like, you know, when my daughter goes to her dad's every other weekend, I'll book in the calendar, like some time immersed in woodland or swimming in a lake or something like that, because it might feel like a luxury to some people, but for me, I know it's sort of a necessity of like, you know, what I need to be the best person that I can be, so I can bring it as a parent and as a business owner as well.
I think that's a really good point that you make in terms of like prioritizing, because as bad as it says, I'm probably going to have a load of businesses like me mailing me like, no, we're good to our employees, but the reality of it is your typical corporate conglomerate entity, its priority is to keep you just happy enough to work, to make money. Outside of that, the interest of like the general employer, unless you get a good one, isn't really, like, your happiness is secondary to your performance at the job in reality. Well, it's obviously that you're going to perform better when you're happy, but as long as you're performing, a lot of it falls under the radar. So you have like the stereotypical burnt out, depressed office worker who sat there at a job getting overlooked because, well, their work's getting done. Let's not check in and see how they're doing. And they don't feel like they have the time to go and do these adventures that you're doing because they're prioritizing all of their time into the job that isn't really returning the favor to them. Like it's a very one-sided relationship to the investment the person's putting into the job. They're giving it everything. They're giving it their working hours that they're contracted to, the overtime that they're doing for free, you know, the late nights, the early mornings, like pushing themselves to that extreme. And the company will thank them now and again. Okay, thanks, you've done really well. Awesome, see you tomorrow. You know, that type of thing. And they're not taking that time, and they're going down that path that led you to your break. You know, like that your burnout. And I think that's something that can be said for a lot of people, to basically look at the priorities. Like, are you happy in your job? If not, are you investing too much time in there? You know, like if you're putting all your time into that and it's not bringing you happiness, why are you doing it? You know, try and find something outside of that. Like, yeah, you've got to make a living, but you don't have to invest all your spare hours into that job if it's not bringing you anything other than a headache. You know, because at the end of the day, all you're heading towards is burnout with a slightly healthier bank account. It's still burnout at the end of the day. You know. And it's,
yeah, I mean, I think, and you know, there are definitely some companies out there with that view. I think it is changing. I'm hopeful that it's changing. I think if you look at research and trends on sort of, you know, the next generation coming through the workforce and things that are important to them, you know, whereas it used to be sort of structures and financial incentives. More and more now, younger people, they're looking for a job that delivers for them on, you know, it's something aligned with their values, like something, flexibility is really important to them, a good work-life balance. And more people are sort of looking for ethical companies to work for and seeking out to work in those workplaces. And I think any businesses that ignore that trend are gonna, you know, they're gonna feel the heat of that sort of later down in the line if they're not looking after employees. And I do see, perhaps it's because the businesses that I work with are, you know, tend to be more values led and more proactive on, you know, employee engagement and all that sort of thing. That they're going to see the wins because they're going to be the companies that people are going to work for. And actually, it's just knowing, you know, people can't, you know, it's physically impossible to be productive for like, you know, 10, 12 hours a day. You know, if you actually analyze, even in a sort of 7-8 hour working day, the amount of time that people are actually in flow and working really productively is something, it's only something like 3 or 4 hours. So, you know, if you take that as the baseline and sort of think, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out now about sort of the 4-day working week, and shorter working weeks, and companies are trialing it. But I think it'd be really interesting to see how that works out, because it's not about just being present and, you know, presenteeism sat at a desk. It's about, well, what are the key things that are actually going to drive this business forward? And that is a responsibility on business owners to be really clear on, you know, what their business goals are, and have that feed down into individual staff development plans, and so everyone's really clear what they're actually doing, because a lot of tasks aren't really, you know, you've heard of the whole meetings for meetings' sake, and, you know, there's a lot of organisations that, you know, that's kind of really embedded. But a lot of the sort of newer startups now and more agile businesses, they're like, well, what are the tasks that actually matter? And this is sort of some of the business owners that I've been working with on a coaching basis. Once we've got the nuts and bolts of, you know, time management, energy management, values, we've done all those pieces of work to get sort of the personal life how they want it, is getting into, well, let's look at the business and let's optimize the time that you're spending on your business to make sure that all the activities you're doing are directly either driving you new leads, or connecting with the right people, or bringing more money into the business. Because if they're not, they're a waste of time. And a lot of people are just doing things for the sake of it. You know, like, I'm posting on social media every day, and I'm, you know, talking in 10,000 groups, and I'm, you know, doing all this stuff. And when you actually look at, well, where are their new clients or customers coming from? It'll be, you know, 1 or 2 key things. And you know about the sort of the 80-20 rule. You know, 20, you spend your time, I'm going to explain this really badly, 80% of 20% of what you spend your time on is 20% delivers 80% of results. Yeah. And, you know, it's once you get into the nuts and bolts of that, that's where you can find the extra time that feels like a luxury for all the other stuff. Like, I'll be honest, I have a 2-hour lunch break every day. Now, I can do that because I work for myself, but I know that that's the time when I do your HIIT class. I'll make myself, because when I've got my daughter in the evening, I don't have time to like freshly prepare a cooked meal. So I do that at lunchtime, packing loads of fresh ingredients, stir fry, like have a nice time, you know, cooking it, and get outside and go for a walk and get some fresh air. But then I know that for the rest of the afternoon, I can smash work out. Whereas if I'd worked through thinking, oh, I'll save myself that time, your productivity drops right off. You don't get as much done anyway. And you just feel crap at the end of the day. So it's, there's a book I've been reading all about essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less. And it's all about, you know, so we're kind of, what drives people to burnout in our societies, modern Western societies, sort of structured around like more is more, like, you know, more money, more stuff, like always pushing for more. And the theory of essentialism is ultimately, it's about the disciplined pursuit of less. So doing fewer things but having more impact, because you're not spreading yourself too thin, you're not totally overwhelmed, and really cutting to the core of what's important.
To be fair, I think you timed that well, because one of my friends joined the thing now, and I've spoken to her about this in terms of trying to do too much in terms of her time, widely spread. So let that be a lesson to you. If you joined
You know what you said at the start about being busy, and you know, the old me, I took pride in being busy. It was like a badge of honor. Yeah, I'm the busiest person in the room, I've got loads on, and I might look like I'm getting a lot, you know, really busy now, but actually I'm doing a lot less. But what I'm doing is focusing on what's important. So maybe that's what you see, that I'm doing more, but then I'm taking my 2-hour lunch break and, you know, going for a walk and, you know, spending a day out in the forest every, you know, at the weekend. So yeah, I think busyness can be, it can be a bit of a cover up for what's the word? Yeah, well, I actually read something about sort of busyness being a response to sort of overwhelm or trauma or whatever, because you're just doing stuff for the sake of it rather than stepping back and being objective.
Yeah, well, I think that's this is something that I remember from, it was a fictional book, but it was, I think, no, well, so Birdsong, World War One novel, it was based on, had some fictional characters and some true to life characters. I might be mixing this up with another book, to be fair, but they were talking about the soldiers that when they're in the, it is a very extreme example to get, but when they're in the trenches and in the thick of things, they function. But it's when they come away and they stop and they get that moment of peace, they realize, I'm not coping with this, you know, and they start to fall. And they obviously very much watered down version of it now in modern society. But stress is stress, and it's very much the same thing. Like, people will be pushing themselves to the point where, and they're keeping so busy and they're just non-stop. And when they finally get that time to stop, they feel like everything falls apart. They're like, oh my God, I can't deal with all this stuff that's going on around me. And unfortunately, I think that often leads them to throwing themselves back into being busy, because they don't want to face the realization that they're not coping with it until they get to the point where they literally just hit the wall and they cannot function anymore. And when it comes to like your coaching, so it's something I wanted to talk to you about, like your own coaching and stuff like that. What kind of like inspired you to go into it and to want to help people with these kind of things?
So I guess, you know, my own journey, basically. So I, as I said, after I had my daughter, I was at that, like, I was very busy. Like, I'd juggling, learning how to be a new parent. I think I didn't really realise until later on the mental impacts of all the changes that happened in my life all in one go. And I dealt with it by throwing myself back into work and throwing myself into being a parent as well. It's ridiculous now, but I remember, like, when she was a baby, and I'd read up on all this stuff that babies need, and I was like, right, so I've got to do every day, we've got to do something cognitive, something with colour, something, you know, some physical activity, make sure I've done some yoga and massage. And it was ridiculous. I'd like set up this list that I was trying to power through every day to make sure I didn't miss anything to help her. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't have time to eat properly for myself. Lost a ton of weight. Then there's this whole thing with people compliment you that you've lost weight, but for me it was unhealthy. It was like I was breastfeeding her and I wasn't eating enough. And throw myself, I think, because I felt that identity change really massively, because I had been so career driven, and to suddenly go from having all that freedom and, you know, financial freedom as well, you know, earning a decent amount, having a lot of responsibility at work and all of that, to suddenly sort of being sat on a sofa, pretty isolated, you know, feeding a baby for months on end. it's a massive lifestyle change, and it takes time to adapt. And I really struggled with it, and it's not uncommon, you know, and I think I really feel particularly for people who've had babies during the pandemic, because they've not been able to go to baby groups and all of that sort of stuff. And I guess, well, one thing if anyone's listening who that's affected, to reassure you, the baby will be fine. Like, all the stuff that you think you need to do with them, literally in that first year or so, all they need is you. As long as you're around them and, you know, that they're being fed and you're looking after them, that's fine. All the other stuff is just like, it's more about mum's mental health and, you know, keeping them connected, and, you know, all sorts of changes as well. Even if you haven't had changes to your job or your relationship, friendships change, you know, your ability to go out and socialize changes. So all those connections that you had to your old life, sort of, they kind of fall away, and there is this sort of vacuum where a lot of people suffer with postnatal depression, all that kind of thing. And it's, as I say, I think we're going to unfortunately see the impacts of that with the pandemic. Now, as you say, now things are getting back to normal. That's where sort of the fallout occurs. So, you know, being really mindful to look out for people if you think they might be vulnerable. But for me, it's been a real sort of journey of reconstructing everything, really, and getting all the nuts and bolts of my life right. So I'm happy, she's happy, and everything, and you know, I'm earning money, and like I've got control over all aspects of my life. So that's what. Feeling that impact personally, and obviously the burnout occurred during that period when I was kind of pushing myself to do too much. I was already running one business. For some reason, I thought buying into another business would be a good idea. So I bought a franchise. It was far too much. I was working ridiculous hours. Whenever she was asleep, I was working through the night. And I think a lot of people who've run their own business can probably identify with like those early days when you don't set those boundaries. You just, like, any work that comes in, you just feel like you can't say no to. You just try, like, you take everything on, yeah, it's unsustainable. And then the pandemic hitting, the first lockdown without childcare. So at that point I was running two businesses. I had my daughter at home full time, 2-year-old, potty training, running Zoom calls with all sorts happening on my feet. I won't go into detail, but it was crazy, and it was that point where I was like, you know, I'm going to end up hitting burnout again if I don't make some changes. So that made me sort of look at all my my work-life balance, but also the kind of work I was doing. And I cut a load of stuff out. I just started with a blank slate. I whittled all my projects down to sort of more the high value work. I was doing a lot of smaller stuff as well, and it was just creating mental clutter. And yeah, kind of a process of sort of deconstructing, then reconstructing, and only putting back in the important things, and you know, taking a lot off my plate. And then once I kind of got the nuts and bolts of, you know, money coming in, created time and space for me and my daughter, then it was about fine tuning. Okay, well, developing a deeper understanding of, like, and, you know, my own energy, how to manage that, personal development work, therapy, going deep and sorting out, or, you know, the things that kind of, you know, the drivers for why I push myself so hard and all of that. And so I learned a lot, and I wanted to help other women who were going through the same. And so last year I started coaching new mums generally about various different things. So there was everything from sort of the career change conversation that we talked about before. People's priorities change, the needs change, what they want from work changes. and a lot of them changed career or start a new business or whatever as a result. There was also had one lady who was really, for her it was about the health changes, so like her body had changed a lot and she was feeling really unhealthy, so it was more, I guess, more up your street, but sort of from a kind of motivation perspective. And then I focused in this year on single mum business owners who'd hit burnout, because I realised if I was going to have real impact, it was sort of about niching down on a particular area where I could go really deep. And I've done a lot of sort of deep work on that, and had spoke to, there's so many women who were kind of impacted by it. And yeah, what's come out of that is I've sort of gone full circle in, you know, a lot of it comes down to sort of values and identity, but also the financial freedom piece for single parents especially. They want financial autonomy. All the women I was working with was business owners. So again, I'd end up spending a lot of time on their marketing and their business and the nuts and bolts of that. So having worked in marketing for like 18 odd years beforehand, that ended up coming through quite strongly in the work that I was doing. So going forward, I think that's where I'm going to be focusing, and I'm developing an offer around that at the moment. We're happy to come and chat again about how all that works at a later date, if you wanted. But yeah, just I sort of see it as, you know, if you're to be happy, to be truly happy and content and have all the nuts and bolts working, it's about living in alignment with your own values, like doing work that feels meaningful and purposeful, but that can also pay you what the amount you need for the lifestyle you want, and to create time and space for you to spend time with your family or do the things that you love or the things that light you up as well. So that's my mission at the moment, is to help people from more on the business side, helping women have financial freedom so that they can, you know, when they become mums, all those challenges, sort of help them through that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it's funny you mentioned like that, the change of priorities and everything there. Like for me, it's an area that I'm going through myself at the minute, in terms of looking at like where I'm spending my time and basically saying, okay, what would I like to be doing with that time ideally? So it's like, if I've got sessions spread all over the place, all over the day and things like that, it's like, well, is that session worth the time to, like, is the money I get worth the time I invest in that? Or would I rather spend that time taking my boy out for a walk, you know, or playing with the dogs, or, you know, like, or training myself, or do, you know, like, how would I like to spend my time? And I think this is, so anyone that's watching this, there's a video you should watch on YouTube. And it's one of those things that changed my life completely. I've shared it on here many, many times before, a long time ago. But it's, if you go to YouTube and search, what would you do if money was no object? And it's basically, I think it's a philosopher talking about how you'd like to spend your time. And basically, he finds all these people like coming from artistic backgrounds, or, you know, and asking, well, I don't know what to do now. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And you know, he gets all these different answers, and he says, basically, go and do that, and the money will come if you invest your time in it. Because like, if you like something, you enjoy spending your time there, you can master it, and then you can get a fee for it, you know, and you can spend your time. And yeah, it might not be the same fee as if you go and work in a corporate conglomerate, you know, like 9 to 5, but at the same time, for what it will do for your life satisfaction, for me, it's a worthwhile trade. You know, it's, at the end of the day, you'd rather be in, you know, have enough money to do what you want and enjoy doing what you want, than have more money than you know what to do with and no time to do anything that you want to do. You know,
exactly. So yeah. Do you live to work or work to live?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good point to hammer home for people watching this, and definitely something that I think people that are finding themselves in that kind of area at the minute, where they find themselves doing too much, having no time to themselves, and genuinely just not content with what they're doing in life. to hit you up and basically have a chat. And if someone's willing to do that, if someone wants to do that, where can they find you? Like, where would be the place to go if they want to get in touch with you about the kind of work that you're doing at the minute?
Either on Facebook. I've got a personal account on Facebook and Instagram where I've posted a lot about sort of the journey side of it, and some of the coaching stuff, and also about the outdoor adventures. So if anyone's interested in the kind of forest bathing, meditation side of things, or ice water immersion, I mean, I didn't touch on the mental health benefits of that. So they've been well documented, and from personal experience, I'd say, the first hour or so after you've done it, you're on a massive high, like a real adrenaline buzz. So that sort of ticks if you like a buzz, it ticks that box. But for the rest of the day, it is just the effects it has on your physiology. It just kind of calms everything right down. And there's a real sort of peace and serenity you get for, I'd say, it lasted a good couple of days. I'd actually had quite a big to-do list that afternoon after the first time I'd done it. And I ended up just relaxing with my thoughts for quite a while. So, there's the mental health side of all that, as well as sort of the physical side. So if anyone's interested in any of that, or if anyone's Yorkshire based and wants to give it a go, more than happy to coordinate activities with people, and if they want someone to go with as a first go. If anyone's interested in a coaching conversation as well, contact me through Facebook. So our Facebook, it's facebook.com/Helen.Ruth.Robinson, or you can go to COSLA's account and find me on there. And Instagram, it's _Helen_Robinson.
I'll tag those in here for you as well. Speaking about like your ice river swimming, I don't know if I ever mentioned it to you, but it was quite a funny it's like a tale of two weekends, I suppose, because while you were out swimming in a frozen lake, I was sat at home, like wrapped in a blanket with a coffee, really cold. And I remember like had my feet up on the chair, reclining, drinking coffee, and I was just mindlessly browsing Instagram, and the picture of Helen popped up. You'll see it on her feed, where she's holding like a sheet of ice and like talking about like how they had to break that to get into the freezing cold water. And it kind of made me think, like, you know what? And I was sat there drinking my coffee, and I was like, I should get up and do something. I should
Did it inspire you to get up and do something?
Yeah. I was just like,
oh, nice one.
in my pajamas, and while I was enjoying the warm and having my cup of coffee, I was like, you know what? I should go and do something, be a bit more, a bit more robust, a bit more active than I'm being right at this particular moment in time. So, if you ever find yourself struggling to find motivation to even get yourself up off your couch, browse Helen's Instagram feed. You see things like that. It gave me a kick, so it's definitely worth doing as well.
But also, as well, I mean, some people might look at it and think she's an absolute nutter. They might be right. But, what you said about sort of, I've had people come to me and say, I would love to do something like that, but I couldn't do that. And it's like, what? Yeah, you could. You just it's just about deciding to do it. And there might be sort of some mindset fear blocks around that. But again, if anyone fancies pushing themselves out of the comfort zone, or trying anything like that, but they're a bit scared to do it on their own, then just get in touch, because anyone can do anything. I genuinely believe our minds and bodies are limitless, as are our possibilities for life. And one of the things, I don't know how long we've got, Carls, but something that I was reading about recently is this idea of radical responsibility. So yes, there's always going to be things in your life that put a constraint on you, existing structures that you've got, work constraints, family constraints, or you might feel like, the stuff that's happened in your past that's maybe made you fearful of taking a new step, whether it's a new job, a new relationship, or whatever. But have a look into radical responsibility, and it's this idea that we are 100% responsible for our own choices. And yes, the pandemic might have put a massive dampener on plans and made things really difficult, and some people have had some really awful been through some really awful times. But to, you know, how you move forward and how you respond to that is ultimately your choice. And, you know, you can build new mental pathways past trauma or, you know, poor mental health or anything like that. You can, you know, there are ways to kind of get over things, and it's just about deciding that you want to and taking that first step. If anyone's struggling on that front, again, I'm more than happy to chat to people. My DMs are always open. But if you decide that everything in your life is 100% your responsibility, so really sort of empowering thought that you have complete freedom to change whatever you want. And maybe, let's see, you know, this pandemic and, you know, changes to your job situation or whatever as an opportunity for that reset where you can rebuild and put back in your life the things that you really want, and make your life exactly what you want it to be. So
that's a good sign off right there. And like I say, it does hit home with me myself in terms of like what I've found myself doing over the pandemic is basically like trying to organize my time to be doing what I really enjoy doing. And I 100% endorse that. And I say that people, you know, you'll find so much added satisfaction in your life if you can find a way to spend your time doing what you want to do, and basically and doing, you know, I think that's a lesson that everyone should learn and everyone should aspire to in life, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks very much for that, Helen. I think, you know, like I say, there was quite a lot of content there that I think is going to resonate with, at least I know, very particularly one of my friends who actually joined at the exact moment they needed to when you were talking about it. So I think it was like almost like fate drew them in at that particular moment. You could have been speaking directly to them. But I think a lot of people will benefit from that in terms of like realizing and taking a step back and looking at how they're living their life at the minute, and realizing like it may not align with their overall happiness, and that it's in their power to change it, you know, and everyone should aspire to. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks for having me on.
Look, always,
you know me, I love deep and meaningful chat.
Yeah. Well, like I say, it's yeah, you are one of the more valued members in our online classes because you're part of that community, very chatty to everyone. So, you know, but it is nice to actually like chat to you and have a nice proper chat. So thanks very much for that. Thanks to everyone that jumped in and had a watch. I hope you all got something from that as well. And I will see you guys all next week where I have someone else on. Again, thanks, and hope you enjoy it. Catch you all later, and see you later, Helen.
Bye. Thank you.